Hello there, everybody, and welcome to finally the A's to the Q&A that was set up last week about lockdown and the things that are continuing to affect you with your mental health in that time. There's been a lot of roadblocks coming the way of making me make this video, even down to the fact that I can finally, at 5:30 p.m. on Monday, close my window. There's not too much noise. It's absolutely boiling in here. I could probably do with turn the lights off, but we're here and we've made it. So before I get started on answering your questions, I just want to remind you that I stream live every Tuesday daytime from 10 till 4 and every Sunday evening from 7 till 10 on twitch.tv/mindsetbydave, where you can ask the types of questions that we're answering here today live and get a response live. People think that Twitch is all about gaming, and for a lot of people it is. For me, it's not. I'm there to chat, and I use the games to essentially keep me from being bored if no one's chatting, which as we create the community on there, there's more and more people chatting each day. So without further ado, let's get into the questions. So first up, we have Lisa Johnson. And Lisa Johnson says, I am currently struggling with the thought of going back to normal. Confidence, self-esteem is much lower than it was before being at home for months, and the thought of being back with larger quantities of people and doing the things I had planned seems extremely scary now. Also, the fear of others' judgments, not helped by someone already making a comment about COVID weight gain. Supposedly all that is the fear of stepping out of my new comfort zone. You've basically just answered the question for me at the very end there, Lisa, but then I expect nothing less of you. You do answer the questions for me. First of all, the person who made the comment about COVID weight gain, I can't personally advocate a punch in the face, but, you know, I wouldn't not want you to do that. But on the rest of the stuff, yeah, bang on the money. It is a case of stepping out of your new comfort zone. And basically, your comfort zone in the past over the transformation, knowing you the way I do, over the transformation that you've had, that comfort zone grew over time. And where it was at the end, the end of the journey where you were up to before COVID, it was so much further away from where it started. And you are nowhere near back where you started right now. You are so much closer to where you were than where you started. But this thing up here, these brains of ours, they tell us that we're starting all over again, that it's more scary than it was the last time. It's not. You're not starting from scratch. You're starting from experience, okay? You are starting from the experience of before, and you need to get back on that and start making those small baby steps again. And the biggest piece of advice there is, I would say, treat each one of those baby steps as if it's a milestone you've never reached before. Because I know from your first journey that you were made up at every milestone along the way. Now, this time around, because you've achieved those milestones already before, the human brain has an inclination to kind of sweep them under the carpet, forget that they ever happened, and, forget the fact that they're actually worth anything this time around. And what we want to do is we want to get back into the idea of celebrating them. So treat it as a post-lockdown PB. Treat it as a new normal PB. You may have achieved those things before, but you've never achieved them in this situation. So they are unique achievements that deserve to be treated as such. The same is true with getting back and seeing other people. I don't think you're going to go directly from, seeing one or two people to seeing absolutely everyone and going to events. Baby steps. Take little bits of progress along the way. And then over time, expand the amount of people that you see. Maybe if that means going around to seeing a friend who's got their partner and their kids there, or whether that is seeing a few of your family all at the same time. Maybe even seeing a few of the extended family at the same time. Build these things up slowly and congratulate the crap out of yourself for every step that you take. Okay. Number 2, Barbara Sweeting says, mine is probably pretty common, going back to work in a school that I only started in 4 weeks before lockdown. I loved it and was just beginning to get to know a few of my colleagues. I know school remained open, but I wasn't needed, so I feel a bit back to square one. I've not actually looked at the questions, so I don't know if recurring themes are going to come up. But yeah, that's weird how that says back to square one. And the same sort of thing, Barbara, I will say to you as what I've just said to Lisa. You're not back at square one, okay? You've done square one. Square one was the terrifying thing 4 weeks before lockdown of going in when you didn't know anyone whatsoever. This time round, you're not really any further behind than you were. In fact, you're actually further ahead than you were on that day. It may seem like they've had 4 or 5 months worth of continued bonding and you've missed out on that, but you are further ahead than the person you were going into the situation at the beginning. And obviously it was an exciting thing for you that then. One weird thing I actually kind of remembered today is that anxious can also mean excited. We talk about it in mental health about flipping it because it feels the same way. But the definitions of anxious, the second definition of anxious in the Oxford English Dictionary is eager to do something. It's an eager anticipation. So I'm anxious to meet someone can actually be a positive. So let's try and change that into a positive. Let's try and look at that and say, right, okay, you're eager to get back in there. You're excited to get back in there. And when September rolls round, which is literally round the corner now, and things start up again, you're not starting from square one, you're starting from experience. You've already got over the initial icebreakers of meeting these people. So you are a little bit ahead of where you were before. And if you repackage it like that, it'll be a whole lot easier for your mind to deal with it. Okay, question number 3. Mrs. Tiernan, aka Mel, going back to work and getting back into that routine, how risks will be managed, and I'm also moving into a new role I'm not familiar with, so most like starting again. I work from home during lockdown, but haven't been in work since March as I was unable to go back when they returned in mid-June. Mel, feel like this is going to be almost a repeat of the last 2 answers, and I apologize for that. Obviously, you've got the added bonus of going into a new role. So you've got the nervousness or the anxiety that we might normally have about going into a new role. Here's the thing. No one's ready for the new roles on day one. You're not supposed to be. You don't really move into a new role because you're completely ready for it, and then that's it. You settle into it on day one. The idea of any new role is to be a new challenge, and that's the purpose of it. That's what moving on up in a career or a situation actually is. Here's the thing, you may feel like you're not ready for it, but you're not ready for it yet. You become ready for it as you move forward. I know that you're a mum of 2. No one's ready to be a parent like the day the kids are born. You start learning to be a parent once the kids are born. The same with driving. No one's ready to drive when they pass the test. We start learning to drive once we're actually out there on our own and doing the role. You will get ready for it. I know you're a massively resilient person, and you will actually be fine. But again, the same thing, please, rather than tell yourself the story of I'm starting all over again, just maybe look at it as I'm on a stepping stone into something new. I'm excited about moving into a new idea, a new role. Start telling yourself it in that way. And when we tell ourselves that story, we reframe it that way, we paint that picture that way, it again allows you to change anxiety and fear for excitement. You're going to be absolutely amazing, and you're going to absolutely smash it, and know you are. And again, it's just a sign of how capable you are because you're moving on up. Okay, Ali Lodge. My biggest fear is how to get my relationship with my husband back on track, or will it ever get back on track? Lockdown has been tough as we, for a few reasons, have both been home for all of it. Yeah, okay, so this is a tough one, and lockdown has been very tough on relationships, even some of the strongest relationships I know. And I think this comes down to something that not a lot of people are talking about. Not a lot of people now that, I know I went nearly into Michael Caine then, didn't I? Not a lot of people are talking about the idea that there's really is a sweet spot for how much time we spend with our partners. Very uncomfortable thing for people to talk about, because of course, we should be able to spend 100% of our time with them all day, every single day. But no, not really. Each and every one of us probably took for granted beforehand how much those little bits of time to ourselves actually meant to us and actually created that space for us to breathe. There's an expression, the devil is in the dose. And I've seen that in a lot of relationships over lockdown, in the fact that even people who were perfectly well together, when the dose becomes 24/7, the dose is too much. And at the same time, there are people who, during lockdown, their partners have gone into kind of more essential work and therefore been away from the other person more. And again, that becomes a sort of a minimum. When you and your partner, what was it, husband, when you and your husband do move into the new normal, I mean, before even moving into the new normal, talk about this. Talk about it. Set out what you want to achieve, what you want from the relationship. If that is spending more time together, if that is having more time to yourself, be clear on that and talk about it. I talk about slingshots and boomerangs a hell of a lot. A slingshot being you pull it back, you put it under effort, it flies forward. A boomerang being sat right here on my desk. A boomerang being something that you throw forward in order and then it comes whipping back. You get a positive in the short term, only to get a negative in the long term. Avoiding these conversations may feel like a positive in the short term because it gives you the comfort in that moment. But whilst these things are playing on your mind, they may give you comfort in that moment because you don't want the kind of conflict. But you're going to kind of be worrying like this behind the scenes, and that's not going to be any good for your own mental health. Be clear on where you think it's going wrong, but instead of talking about all the ways in which it's wrong, suggest ways in which it could be better. If you go in talking more about what you would like more of, rather than this isn't working, that isn't working, this isn't working, it will hopefully be received in a more positive light. When you go to the new normal, you may find that the new dose, in terms of how much time you're spending around each other, actually makes things better. I'm not saying that that some people might be sitting there and saying, well, if you can't be around each other 24/7, then there's a problem in itself. I don't agree with that because, I love my kids to bits and I can't be around them 24/7. So it's like, I can't be around anyone 24/7 personally. It's like, I need my time and my space to myself, for my brain to recover, for my thoughts to actually have some space to breathe. That's okay. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So try and realize what it is that you think you need more of. What would you like the relationship to look like going forward? And then do what you can to create that and communicate that with your husband. Next one, RT Bug. Had to take over care for elderly due to pandemic. Now the schools are about to open and it's time to go back. I get the nerves that one of us will bring the COVID home and we just don't know how we will impact the elderly living with us. I get that it's not something we can control, but the nervousness that comes from the thought is crazy. Yeah, okay. It's not something you can control 100%. It is something that you can make reasonable measures for. And that comes down to excuse me, we're doing things like wearing masks. I've just coughed while we're talking about this. How ironic is that? Doing things like wearing masks at home when you are around the elderly, limiting the kind of close contact to them. This is just what the research stands. I personally am no doctor, so, I'm just going off what the research currently says in terms of, close communication. And it being that's how it's most easily transmitted. But the advice I would give to you on this came from, I'm trying to think of who it was. It wasn't someone who gave it to me directly, but it was an ex-Navy SEAL, I think, or worked out in bomb disposal in Afghanistan, I think. And he basically said that for a little while they would basically believe in that implemented explosive devices, whatever they're called, IEDs, improvised explosive devices. They talked about the fact that for a little while their brain was on the fact that they're everywhere. And the more they focused on those things, the more they saw the potential danger. And as a result, they found it very hard to actually go on with their job. Now, you might think it's worth actually having a level of danger, like a level of perception on all of this, because you will see certain things. But when we focus on things over the top, what we then do is we start seeing problems where problems don't even exist. And that is going to kind of play on your mental health and play on your capacity. If you're there literally worrying about the fact that this thing is going to happen all the time, then it's going to play on your mental health negatively. So what I would say on this, I'm not going to say don't think about it, because don't think about it's one of the worst pieces of advice that anyone can ever give. Don't think about a purple elephant. Congratulations. And whatever you do, don't think about a purple elephant. When we say don't, person always does. Don't look down. Everyone looks down. Everyone looks down. Don't press the red button. Don't touch wet paint. We never go around stroking walls normally. So what I will say instead is actually deliberately think about other things. So choose other things to put your mind on. Choose other things to distract yourself. That is not kind of, what's the word I'm looking for, negligent of the elderly that are living with you. That is good for you to look after the fact of your own sanity. Because if you're constantly on edge with it, it's probably going to affect your sleep. It's going to affect your stress levels. When your sleep and your stress levels are affected, you are going to make worse decisions. And ultimately, that's going to be worse for the person. So do what you can to make reasonable adjustments, to talk about it to the rest of the family about what those adjustments are going to be, communicate, and then from that point on be like, right, okay, we've done our bit, we continue to do our bit, now let's watch a Friends marathon. And distraction is not always a bad idea. Okay, next one. Trusting others to self-isolate themselves and their family when needed. Okay, that's from Amanda Sally Sam. That's a really tough one. I think I saw a few of these kind of up front, and I think there's a little theme going to be coming up in a second. I can't say for definite because I didn't look at all the questions, because I like to do them off the cuff and for the first time when I actually do these Q&As. So trusting other people. Quite frankly, you can't worry too much about what other people are doing, and you really can't influence it as much as you would like to either. As you'll have seen for the last 18 weeks, people have been arguing about things more than ever online. And the more they argue about things, no one's coming round to someone else's viewpoint on these things. And the way we argue is absolutely terrible in all this. If you've followed me for a long while, you might have remembered that I kind of broke down crying, being the sensitive soul I am. Mother's Day, I believe it was, because I just saw so much argument online. Now, a person who believes that they shouldn't wear a mask or that infringes on their civil liberties or wherever it might be is not going to wear a mask because someone who believes you should wear a mask says that they're being selfish. In fact, that's only going to push them more into their own kind of echo chamber. At the same time, a person who believes that we shouldn't wear a mask no matter how much that person shouts and says that it's all a hoax or whatever they're saying to someone else who does think and believe that you should wear a mask, they're not going to change any hearts and minds there either. We don't guilt each other into greatness. We don't kind of pressurize other people into it. You can try your best to educate people, and you can try your best to sit down and have actual conversations with people about it and about your reasoning behind it. And when we get to have longer conversations about these things, where there's body language involved, where there's tone of voice involved, yes, we might get somewhere. But the vast majority of the time, we're arguing over Twitter, arguing over social media, sending memes, putting things up, calling people selfish, see you next Thursdays, and so on and so forth. And those things are not any way to change other people's minds. As for worrying about what other people are doing, you need to focus on what you're doing and just let other people do whatever people are doing. Because like yesterday, we were out for, was it yesterday? Saturday, we were out for ice cream, and there was a woman outside with a kid, and the kid must have been maybe 10, 11 or something like that. And this kid was using the park, like the benches that everyone was sat at as parkour, basically jumping up on it with their trainers on, where everyone's sat eating ice cream, jumping up on the actual table of the bench and walking along it. And the mum's just stood there watching them. And me and my wife are just stood there going, should we say something? Should we say something about not letting him put the bottom of his trainers on a table where people are eating? And to me, it was just mind-boggling that this was happening. But I was like, you know what? If I do say something, all that will happen is that they'll get defensive and they'll tell me to F off probably. And then what? So now the kid's already walked on the table. Table's already got whatever the hell crap was on the bottom of his shoes on it. And now I'm getting swore at in public. Some battles just aren't worth fighting. The outcome of that's not going to be what I want it to be. And even though I believe, common sense, I've got an expression, common sense isn't, because it really isn't. That, to me, is common sense. Don't let your children walk on a table. But not to her, it's not. Okay. Perrin C90, I've always mentioned it, but I've never been impacted by the fact that fundamental change is sometimes inescapable. It's hard to deal with. Modern life is set up to allow us to keep calm and carry on, but the machinery of modern life does sit on a knife edge. It's difficult to deal with such dramatic change when you've never been exposed to it, and lockdown wasn't even that dramatic. So I think the prime thing there is focusing on that concept of the knife edge, the idea it's kind of hard to think about the fact that the entirety of society could all just come collapsing down. And again, if you spend too much time thinking about that, that's all you're going to see. You're going to see society being balanced on this precarious knife edge. And the question is, I suppose, to what level are you going to personally do anything about that? If you are going to hoard a bit of extra food and a bit of extra toilet roll, not to the point of obviously what we did back at the beginning of the year, then that's totally and utterly your call. If you think that you want to make extra precautions to make sure that if society did fall off the knife edge, that yourself, your family, your loved ones are actually cared for, then you do what you need to do. But I would say that if you sit there thinking about that for too long, those are things that we can't necessarily impact unless you're going to go out there and campaign for change in a certain area. There's no real benefit in kind of spending too much time thinking about it. And again, it's not a case of just don't think about it. It's a case of what else could you spend your time on? What else could you spend your energy on? Where else could you put that focus and that attention? And I would say look at things that way if you can. Tina Louise says, getting back to some kind of normality at work when I just feel overwhelmed every time I go outside. I am anxious about how close other people get to me, that they don't wear face coverings and don't seem to get that their actions put others at risk. Same as what I said to Amanda Sally Sam really on this one is the fact that you just need to focus on what you can do to stay away from people. And if you need to try and exert your boundaries a little bit. People talk about this to cyclists, and it's probably why you see a lot of cyclists actually, if you're driving down the road and you see a cyclist that's about 10 feet away from the curb, that's because cyclists are told to sort of show off their boundaries to a degree. If they move that far away from the curb, it shows the cars behind them that they want the cars to pass them that far away from that. Do what you can to ensure that you move away from people. You're not, unfortunately, going to change people. You're not, even if you walked around with a sign over your head saying, please stay 2 meters away from me at all time, you get people that don't even look up to see it. And again, unfortunately, common sense isn't. So what you consider to be common sense is not. And we're not going to change other people on this. Focus on doing what you can to keep yourself safe. Make sure you wear your mask. Make sure you do clean them regularly. And kind of maybe even if you can go out during more less busy times. I actually hate to recommend that because what I don't want is for your comfort zone to shrink too far. And if you do that, I would say still do challenge yourself to go out at busy times, just so you keep that as something that you're able to do. I'm just going to quickly, I think that's it. That's definitely it on Instagram. I just need to check Facebook and see whether any extra questions came in over there. Okay, so it turned out that the post didn't actually go to Facebook. So that is all of the questions. I hope that you've enjoyed this. And remember, if you want to join me tomorrow, will be the next time, 10 a.m. till 4 p.m. on twitch.tv/mindset by Dave. I would love to come and spend some time with you. We can chat about this, about any of the other stuff that we've talked about here, about anything to do with mindset and mental health. And I hope to see you down there. Catch you soon.